What's up? I'm the original Amish Ninja. And today, I was gonna do what I normally do for these videos and have my Google Docs displayed on screen. But in the document I have written about the geography of Shatter Cauldron, there's some spoiler-sensitive information that I actually don't want spoiled. So I'm going to be picking out specific information to my liking from the document and discussing that instead. Okay. The geography of Shatter Cauldron. Let's begin. Zaltia, the barrier-confined land. Zaltia was split in two, territorially speaking. This resulted in either half of the country receiving its own regional designation. The eastern half of Zaltia is known as the Image of Order. Named locations include Holy City Brigandeel, Karista, Organdi, Briggs, Hilton, Nori, and Cradle. All of these locations are accompanied by forested areas, such as the Lorien Forest, the Southern Zaltian Forest, and the Bastard Woods. The western half of Zaltia is known as the Violet Scar. Named locations include Tower Macbeth, Hornet's Hive, the Old Mains Estate, the ruins of Atare Castle. Encompassing all of these is the Strawman Forest, which is the perfect environment for heathen activity. Image of Order. This is the eastern half of Zaltia. The bulk of Silverwatch Guild's ranks are stationed behind the Brigandeel Wall, which surrounds Karista, Organdi, Briggs, and of course, Brigandeel itself. This is also where the most of Zaltia's non-magic population live, for if they lived anywhere else, they'd be ripe pickings for experimentation at the hands of heathens. The Lorien Forest, north of Brigandeel, is named after the original founder of Silverwatch Guild. After its predecessor, the Holy Alignment, was disbanded. Her name was Lorien Doxfield, and she founded the Silverwatch Guild right around the time a certain young witch first began causing trouble. This was well before the witch in question wound up becoming the single greatest threat to the organization some centuries later, and her name was Angela Lace, later known as Angela the Hag. The Southern Zaltian Forest, which lies due south of Brigandeel, is considered holy ground, not to be stepped on by anyone except those Mark Hammond, the present commander of Silverwatch, grants permission. In truth, though, Mark Hammond doesn't even follow his own rules on this. He'll never personally punish anyone who breaks his rule, because he knows the real reason that the forest is considered holy ground in the first place. The Bastard Woods north of Cradle is a forest not often surveyed by the Silverwatch Guild. For reasons never reported back on, death by absurd circumstances occurs for anyone who sets foot in there. For all intents and purposes, the Bastard Woods have been deemed outside of Silverwatch's jurisdiction. But it isn't clear whether it's the territory of the Boiling Pot Coven either, necessarily. Violet Scar. This is the western half of Zaltia. Before the emergence of Angela the Hag, this portion of Zaltia was home to a forest-dwelling people known as the Strawman tribe. They existed peacefully, albeit separately from the rest of the Zaltian public. Their home was the Strawman Forest, before Angela the Hag emerged from the west and performed her Cauldron of Darkness ritual to contain Zaltia within a barrier. For several weeks, it hadn't even occurred to the Silverwatch Guild that Angela had brought her Boiling Pot Coven to Zaltia's doorstep. They weren't even the first ones to realize it. The Strawman tribe was enslaved for a short period, and then the ones who didn't willfully submit to Angela were slain. To prevent an eventual uprising carried out by the survivors, she performed another Cauldron of Darkness ritual to fuse them all into one being. This fused being is now among her elites, the Bloodied Womb, and is in charge of the Strawman Forest. The first ones to realize that Angela the Hag had shown up were the regal lords of Zaltia, who lived in the Atare Castle. However, by the time the lords of Atare realized what had happened, it was already too late. A lycanthrope sent by Angela the Hag led a horde of lesser lycanthropes, also known as werewolves, into the castle and had slain everyone, except one mother and her infant son, who had successfully fled into the Bastard Woods to the east. Sometime later, this mother and her son arrived in Cradle. The arrival of this mother and son is what tipped off the Silverwatch Guild about Angela the Hag's presence. All non-magical civilians were urged to evacuate behind the Brigadier Wall from this point going forward. Mark Hammond was only a teenager at this point. To prevent this video being too short, I'll switch to a different topic. Shatter Cauldron is actually part of a trilogy I have planned, overall. And this trilogy is called the Fortissimo Trilogy. The Fortissimo Trilogy is a group of stories that all take place within the same mythos. This trilogy consists of 3 stories, each following its own protagonist and plot. All 3 take place in the world of Camry, on a planet called Nava, where humans exist on only one crescent-shaped continent called Termis. Other continents exist on Nava, but they are unsafe for habitation due to being populated by giant man-eating monsters that appeared out of nowhere one day in an age long forgotten. What little surviving records from that period make mention of a figure called the Watchmaker, and curious scholars have pointed to this enigmatic figure as being responsible for ruining the world and prompting a mass evacuation to the continent of Termis. It's rather analogous to leading a herd of cattle into pens awaiting to be slaughtered. Alongside Shatter Cauldron, there are 2 more stories I plan to work on, and they are named Evil Wings and Brighton World, respectively. I won't go too into detail about what those other stories are about, because I want to stay focused on Shatter Cauldron. But just know that Shatter Cauldron is part of a larger project called the Fortissimo Trilogy, as I've already mentioned. Well, it seemed this video wound up being short in spite of my efforts to elongate it. I am the original Amish Ninja, and if you like my content, go ahead and hit that bell, hit the subscribe button, leave a like, all that other YouTube jargon. Peace out.